Welcome to the Jboy Show, hosted by Jake Crain, the fastest growing sports show in the nation.
I'm Coach Hugh Freeze.
This is Super Bowl champion Brandon Graham.
Hey, this is DJ Shockley, and you're watching.
And thanks for watching the Jboy Show.
What is up, everybody? As usual, thank you guys for hopping in. Got some more great content today. Got Jordy Culotta and Dave from the Gators Breakdown. Gonna get to that in a minute, but first, got to give a shout out to betonline.ag. Head over there today. Online casino is always open. Look, NBA Finals is roaring. Major League Baseball is roaring. Soccer, we know how crazy that finish was in the Euros. There's still more of it going on. So anywhere you want to bet, and if you go to betonline.ag right now and you sign up, whether it's desktop, mobile, you get a 50% sign-up bonus. Yes, you heard that right. 50% sign-up bonus. Give a shout to Dave Mason, everybody over there at betonline.ag. It's great stuff. Go get on there now, and they're going to play the sharps. That's one of the best things about them. They're not going to sit there and grind it down. You're going to get player props. You're going to get team props. You're going to be able to do parlays, teasers, pleasers, all that stuff. It's betonline.ag. Now, my monologue for today, I'm going to keep it short and sweet, and it's something I've talked about. Listen, I put out SEC preseason predictions again for how it's going to finish in 2021. Caught a ton of backlash from Florida fans, which, look, it's expected. I get it. You know, I get it. And that's what makes the SEC great. That's what makes the sport great is the dissension, I guess, because echo chambers will be the death of us all. Don't want to put anything out there and everybody agree with it because that's no fun, especially as we get toward the season where we're going to see it make hay. But there is a certain week for Florida that for me and Todd Grantham, who in my opinion is under more pressure as a coordinator than really anybody out there in the space, especially the SEC, and that is week 3 when they host Alabama. Now, Alabama's going to have played Miami, so they've got a warm-up game. We know Florida's schedule going into week 3. They've got FAU, not huge tests. That's going to be the first huge test for Todd Grantham's defense. And a lot of Florida fans, whether it's been on social media, whether they've hit me up by email, that is where they're going to make their decision on Todd Grantham, whether that's fair or not fair. And I'm going to say this, Florida should have enough talent to be able to slow Alabama down. They had enough talent last year, in my opinion, but weren't able to do it. Alabama replaces their quarterback. They replace their top wide receivers. They do bring Mechie back, having to replace some guys on the offensive line. The defense at Alabama should be a lot better, but when you look at that offense matchup versus Florida's defensive matchup, to me, that's what the game is going to come down to. And from Todd Grantham's standpoint, if you're able to go out there and at least stymie Alabama's defense a little bit, not even win the game, but play good enough on defense to keep you in it, I think that's a big building block for Florida going through the year. But on the other hand, if it gets out of control, if Alabama goes in there and drops 45, I don't know if Grantham makes it past week 3. And I don't want guys to get fired. I live the life. I don't root for guys to get fired. But I think Florida fans are putting all of their eggs in that Alabama basket. And you know what? I don't blame you. I don't blame you. Because being able to stop Kentucky's one thing. But when you're at a place like Florida, and hell, I've got them finishing 4th in the East right now. I think it's going to be close between them and Missouri, especially if Missouri's defensive players keep jumping ship like the Titanic's going down. But when I look at that, Florida is used to having a defense that is able to at least hamstring or slow down some of the top offenses. And how are you judged as a coach in the SEC? You're judged on what you do against the most elite teams. And Florida is a state school. They recruited a high level. They've got good players. Todd Grantham knows what he's doing defensively. Last year, you know, you can put it up to the pandemic. You can say it's an aberration or whatever. But week 3, and I agree with you, Florida fans, is judgment day to me for Todd Grantham and that defense. Because that is the table setter. That is the table setter for the whole season. Because if you look at that schedule, and I've got it pulled up right here, looking at it, it doesn't get a whole lot easier. You do have Tennessee at home the next week, but then you go to Kentucky in a huge game. You got Vandy at home, then you go to LSU, then you get Georgia at home, then you go to South Carolina, and then to Missouri. That's not an easy schedule. And if it snowballs early and week 3 goes bad, I don't know if Todd Grantham survives in Florida. And I don't know what the rest of Florida's season looks like. Because I'm telling you right now, they're not going to be able to reproduce the offensive production that you had with Kyle Trask, Kyle Pitts, Kadarius Toney, go down the list. And I don't think Emory Jones is a bad player, but I don't think you're going to be able to put up the numbers offensively that you were able to last year. So what does that mean? The defense has to be a whole hell of a lot better. And week 3, you might as well call it Armageddon because it's Judgment Day. That's my monologue for today. Let's get to Jordy Culotta. Let's get to Dave Gators Breakdown. We'll talk about it even more. This is the Jboy Show. Let's win the water cooler. We're brought to you by BetOnline. All right, everybody, let's hop into the interview portion today. Very excited to bring on our first guest, Jordy Culotta from the Jordy Cullota Show. Make sure and check that out. YouTube, everywhere it's at. I'm going to let him plug it as well. Jordy, what's up, man?
Jboy, good to be back, man. Thanks for having me back, Jake.
Definitely, man. Definitely. And look, I want to start out, obviously, going to get into football as the season approaches here, but LSU with a big baseball hire, Jay Johnson. You look who he's brought along, not only, players from the transfer portal, but coaches. Just for a second, for our audience that may not be super familiar with who Jay Johnson's brought, what he kind of brings to LSU, give us kind of your dissertation on the Jay Johnson hire. I'm excited about it. I know a lot of people down there are too.
Yeah, look, I think that LSU did a tremendous job here of searching out a candidate. Scott Woodward really comes with a reputation of seeking out his guy, finding him, paying him, and putting him in place. And he did the same thing here with Jay Johnson. There was a couple of names that surfaced when this job opened up and Maneri announced that he was going to be stepping away and retiring. And, Johnson's name was out there, but once Woodward really zeroed in on him and got the deal done, he's been really impressive. His first 10 days on the job, he was able to get into the transfer portals and get guys like Jacob Berry from Arizona. He was able to put together a staff of guys like Jason Kelly, who comes with a big time reputation over at pitching coaching with Arizona State. The David Fitzgerald, who he got out of Dallas Baptist, is a guy that was an associate head coach there and really somebody who had paid attention in recruiting this part of the country. When it first came out of Jay Johnson getting the job, Jake, it was really kind of talked about his West Coast geographical ties and whether or not it would translate to the SEC. And I think the staff he's put together, the immediate impact that he's made in the transfer portal, a guy like Tyler McManus out of Samford, who is a offensive-minded catcher, graduate transfer, has a year left out of Slidell, spent a year at Delgado, comes in with some really big numbers, batted .346, knocked out 11 last year for Samford and had success against SEC pitching. It's just been a really good feedback, a good return on investment here early on Johnson.
Yeah, and again, LSU, I've said it, whether I've gone on LSU shows or had LSU guys on here, it's weird not seeing LSU be elite in baseball. Not that they didn't have, a good year last year with Paul Maneri's swan song and getting to the super regional, but I think with Jay Johnson and what he brings, they're not playing any games with as much as LSU has invested in, and excited to see him from a recruiting standpoint, putting that staff around him, and again, adding even more to the SEC, which, we had an all-SEC College World Series final. Shout out Mississippi State. They won one, Jordy. What were your thoughts on Mississippi State winning the whole shebang, my friend?
It was great to see Mississippi State finally get into winner's circle. I don't know if you had heard yet in following ESPN's coverage, but that was their first national championship in any sport. They 1,000 times, but shout out to Lemonis and his crew, man. I think that, Nolan Kane told me right before he took the A&M job as the recruiting coordinator, and he's on with Jim Schlossnagle now over in College Station. He said the only way you win a national championship is that you just got to get there. You got to keep going to Omaha, and at some point you'll kick the door down. And Mississippi State, I think, is a great example of that, especially under Lemonis. Is the last 3 years they've been there, they've been close, and finally they're able to bust through. I thought that they had the best team in the tournament. I thought that they were playing the best at the right time, and congratulations to the Mississippi State fan base, because I know that they've been waiting on that one for a long time. And look, I think they're here to stay. I think he's built up a really good program that's recruiting good players, and he's coaching it at a high level. So they'll be there year in, year out.
Yeah, and all it takes is that 1 year to get over the hump, and then you start expecting it even more and more and more. But Jordy, shifting to football, obviously, as we're getting close to media day, another benchmark, stepping stone, I guess you could say, toward the season. It'll be here before you know it. We know some of the off the field stuff that LSU's had to deal with, but I look at the roster. I'm going to get to losing Dare Rosenthal in a second, but I look at the roster with what they're able to return with kind of LSU, and I've said this multiple times, being better as the outsider. I had Brad Johnson on here the other day, Max Johnson's dad, and he said those kids are hungry as hell in that locker room, Jordy, and you've seen it this offseason. It's continued through spring into summer, and look, when LSU's pissed off, LSU's dangerous.
They definitely are playing from a place that they're comfortable in, both them and their head coach. The locker room likes to play as underdogs, and Ed Orgeron does his best work when his back's up against the wall. He's done that repeatedly, even if you go back to his days at USC when he was an interim coach and got that team to play right but before he was brought on at LSU. But there was a lot of doubt around the future of Orgeron, and his seat may be warming up, but his team and his roster right now is championship contending worthy. When you look around and see the depth that they have, whether it's on the defensive line, whether it's in the defensive backfield, whether it's the talent that's incoming at wide receiver, man, Jake, even the quarterback room, that's as healthy as a competition as they've had in a long time at that position. So they've got championship depth. They've got championship talent. I've got some questions around the offensive line. Dare Rosenthal and that message and that story last week was something that LSU is going to have to overcome. But man on man, when you look at this roster, this is one that has championship aspirations for sure.
Yeah, and again, coming off a year as crazy as it was last year, where you lose that amount of guys, it's tough to bounce back. You're able to return some now. You mentioned the quarterback battle, and let's segue to Dare Rosenthal. Were you shocked, Jordy, by him leaving?
I was, I can't say that the story of Rosenthal being in trouble is shocking just because we have seen his name being kicked around, whether it be suspensions or time that is not best served as a student athlete, where he's been in a little bit of trouble. And there's a lot of, hearsay and a lot of talk about him being in trouble again with LSU's drug policy and had to enter the transfer portal and ends up at Kentucky. And I can say this, I can say that Dare Rosenthal has been given countless opportunities at LSU. He's been given a number of chances, and really LSU wanted him to finish his career with his state school. He's out of Faraday, Louisiana, and had a really tremendous upside. But once again, Jake, we see LSU's drug policy, getting them, and you can't be shocked if you're in my position, because we've been covering the program now for over a decade, and this is the same drug policy that threw Tyrann Mathieu out of school. And while it's tough to forgive an administration that can move that rapidly on a player like that, the policy has been in place for a long time, and players have had their opportunities. Do I think it's too strenuous? Beyond a shadow of a doubt. Do I think that it definitely needs some adjusting? Without question. But it has not been adjusted, and it has not been changed. And with the way that it operates, it is much more strict than other SEC schools. And things like this can happen where you can lose your left tackle in the middle of July, and he's now playing for another school that, oh, by the way, you make a trip and play in Lexington in mid-October, and could have your starting left tackle, which you anticipated going into the season, now starting for another SEC school. So I'm shocked that LSU was burned again from a university standpoint. I'm not shocked that Dare Rosenthal was in the transfer portal and looking for another place to play. I think that, if you followed his career, he's been in and out of trouble since his days in Baton Rouge and been given every opportunity. So to see it come to an end like this, it is not as shocking as LSU getting burned again by losing a key player and a key figure in the middle of the offseason. Going into another year.
Yeah, and it's interesting to follow it. It's interesting to see it, and the timing of it is really what gets you too, because it's not only tough to find another guy outside of the guys you have on your roster to come in and play tackle, but to be able to teach him the offense, the checks, to build that chemistry with the guys to the left and right of him. It's something that goes to development. But who backs him up, who replaces him at tackle, and how confident is it? The Wire kid?
Yeah, it'll be Cam Wire, and Ed Orgeron was asked specifically about that on a local radio show here last week about who was going to be next, and he never hesitated, Jake. He fired right back. It's Cam Wire's job. So Wire is a guy who's, out of a local high school here at East Ascension, which is, kind of right up the road from Baton Rouge in a small suburb in Gonzales. And And he seems like he's ready. He came in this season as kind of that sixth man, that utility guy where you could use in a couple of positions, but it seems like his most comfortable spot, or at least the spot where he played in high school, was at left tackle. And he seems like he's going to be the replacement. That clicks everybody up one spot on the depth chart. And, you know, if you were asking me, my primary concern about this team going into the season, it would be offensive line depth. And not that they don't have the guys there. They just got a lot of unproven guys. They have a lot of guys that were recruited at a high level, but they just haven't played at a high level yet. So Cam Wire saw a lot of extended action last season with the games that Rosenthal left. So he's got, he's got some skins on the wall. He's got some confidence to him. And I'm not necessarily sure. You mentioned talking to Brad Johnson the other day. You know, I believe that Max is going to be the starting quarterback, which means that, you know, his backside is going to be protected by Austin Deculus, not necessarily Cam Wire. So that may take some pressure off of him, at least getting into the season and getting him comfortable.
That's a great point. We always assume the left tackle's the guy's blocking the blind side because most quarterbacks are right-handed. Obviously, with the lefty, you flip that, and that could be a good fit with what's gone on. Not taking anything away from Cam Wire, but we got Jordy Culotta from the Jordy Cullota Show here, talking everything LSU. Jordy, before I let you go, just a couple more for you. Number one, Derek Stingley. Is he going to play both ways this year? And if he does, do you like that?
I don't think he does routinely. I think that they put a package in for him to get him on a jet sweep, or maybe run him on a fly route, or put him in to throw something deep in a certain game. My producer, Lloyd Courtney down here, he and I go back and forth.
Give him 20 touches.
And have had this discussion on and off the air. And Lloyd wants him to become the second option on offense when this guy could, potentially be the best defensive player in college football. I just don't know who you take the reps away from, Jake. I think that you've recruited at such a high level on LSU's offense. They do have guys outside of Kayshon Boutte that are very unproven, but they have playmakers. And I think that, if you were to lose Derek Stingley on a jet sweep, if you were to lose him on a fly route where he sprains his ankle and you lose him for key games down the stretch, I don't know how you forgive Ed Orgeron. I know the sport of football is physical by nature, but in a package that doesn't necessarily have to be there for you to win, and you to lose a player like Stingley with doing some type of experiment, I just don't know how a team of this caliber with these types of goals can have that type of scenario play out. So does it make sense for him to get a jet sweep maybe against UCLA and get another one down the line against Florida? Maybe. Does he get multiple touches a game on offense? I hope not, because I think that he is the best defender in college football. I think he's motivated after a down season in his sophomore year. And this is the year that Derek Stingley has talked about for the last 8 years of his life, being in his money season of college football, going into the NFL draft, where if you look at mock draft boards and you listen to scouts, there's not a better college football player in the country than Stingley right now. And he's not really outside of the top 3 of any mocks that you'll see online. So anything this season where he plays to at least expectation of everybody else, I think that he has a stellar junior season, but I think potentially he could be great with what he wants to prove.
No, I agree. I mean, the kid's uber talented. And if you ever watch what he did, from 7-on-7 in high school and moving as an offensive player in high school with the ball. But I'm with you, Jordy. You're not going to find another corner that can do what he can do when he's healthy. And going against these elite SEC wide receivers, you got to have a dog you can put right in front of him. And I would like to coin a phrase if he does play offense, though. Jordy, we can go in 50-50 on a shirt, whatever, the branding of it. When Derek Stingley is on offense, we have to refer to the LSU offense as the Sting T. Does that work for everybody there?
I like it, bro.
You can sell the Sting T for the Sting T. That's a play on wing T for people out there. Your thoughts?
I like it. Yeah, the wing T has probably been forgotten about. These kids that are watching football these days, if they saw the wing T, they'd laugh us out of the room.
They would think it's something you can order from Bojangles or Popeyes or something.
That's right. But Sting T could work, man. If we could get a nice logo on a T-shirt, we might be able to sling that down here.
Hey, listen. Get your max potential with Max Johnson and get the Sting T going with Derek Stingley. But last question, I'm going to let you out of here, Jordy. The UCLA matchup. How are you feeling about it right now? I know everybody's going to throw this to Chip Kelly's dangerous, this, that, and the other. LSU just got to line up and run it down their throat, in my opinion.
I think that LSU's too good on the lines of scrimmage. And I just told you, 3 minutes ago how worried and concerned I was about the offensive line. I feel totally opposite about that on the defensive line that Ed Orgeron has put together here in another year of recruiting. This is what he talked about when he was at the podium being introduced as LSU's coach 5 years ago. He said he was going to build depth on the line of scrimmage. He said he was going to get back to making LSU defensive lineman university. You've got that again now with the depth and the rotation that you got with guys like Jaquelin Roy and Ali Gay and BJ Ojulari and guys that are just going to be coming into the game with fresh legs and in my opinion, have not been seen by guys, like UCLA and the Pac-12. I think that this is Chip Kelly's best team. I think that Chip Kelly will be ready. He will be innovative, but I think that LSU's too strong up front, got too many playmakers to really sustain that for 60 minutes for the Bruins. And look, I think that if LSU was to fall and LSU was to see some not be successful in week one, I think it's something that you can overcome, obviously, with the conference schedule that you play down the line. But it would be a rocky start for Ed Orgeron, who was going into the season with some question marks just around his future and the stability of the program under his direction. I think that game is probably more important for him than it is his football team. If I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more, Jordy. They need a hot start, especially with all the stuff, that's gone on in the offseason, all the talk outside of it. But you go start winning games, a lot of people start forgetting about it, and LSU's used to winning games. Jordy Culotta, great stuff as usual, man. Excited to get you back on. Tell everybody where they can find you. You got great content down there in LSU land, and it's great to follow it.
Thank you, Jake. We're on Twitter. We're all over social media. @Culotta Show is the handle where you can follow us. We're on live 7 to 9 a.m. every morning on our YouTube channel. You can search us there at the Jordy Culotta Show. We're on Facebook, our website, jordyculotashow.com. So we're pretty easy to find. You can find us all over social media, and we're always linked up with Jake and following his content. So if you're in and around his content, you're probably sniffing around ours as well. So give us a follow. We appreciate being here, and we appreciate being back, Jake. Looking forward to catching up at Media Day.
Definitely, man. We'll have a cold soda and talk about it. That's a lot of Jordy Culotta. Appreciate it, my friend. Stay safe down there. Appreciate you guys joining us. We're going to get to Dave Gator Breakdown here in a second. Stay with us. Let's win the water cooler. All right, as promised, excited to bring David Waters in, getting some Florida perspective here from Gators Breakdown on YouTube, all podcast platforms. Also has a really sick strobe light or disco ball in the background right now that I'm seeing. The ambiance there is just delicious right now, David. Yeah. I had the studio's at home, so I had to to keep upgrading it a little bit. So I've upgraded some LED lights and a Gator floating heads there. So got to keep upgrading, never stop. No doubt, man. It looks great. And look, obviously I put out my preseason predictions. You knew we were going to get to this. Every Florida fan listening knew we were probably going to get this right off the bat. And I had Florida finishing 4th in the East. And look, I understand the dissent. I understand Florida fans being like, this guy has no clue what he's talking. Florida hadn't finished behind Kentucky since, Moses led everybody out of Egypt or whatever. But I look at the schedule this year, David, and I look at what Florida has to replace. And I've said on the show multiple times, I think Dan Mullen is one of the best play callers in college football. I think that's what's going to make him a great NFL coach. But I look at this schedule. I see Bama at home week 3, which I'm going to get to that in a little judgment day we had on the monologue here. You've got at Kentucky, at LSU, Georgia at home, at South Carolina, at Missouri. Those are some tough away games. And the two opponents, really that we've gotten the most backlash about was Kentucky and Missouri. Just first off, what do you think about the schedule before we get into the rest of it? Yeah, the schedule, it does beef up a little bit. The normal 2019 or the normal 2020 schedule wasn't all that hard. And that's why a lot of people were picking Florida to supplant Georgia last year, because Georgia had to play Alabama. Florida didn't. And then 2020 rolls around, pandemic comes, and Florida has to add Texas A&M, makes the schedule a little bit harder. Florida ends up losing that game, of course, but we all knew it was going to come down to the game in Jacksonville, and Florida wins that game. Fast forward a year, and it's kind of the same argument from the Georgia side. Georgia doesn't have to play Alabama, Florida does, so you pretty much already guarantee one loss there. Then you kind of have to make up 2 games along the way. It gives the winner in Jacksonville. If you have a loss already in the SEC, you basically have a 2-game advantage over the opponent there. If they come into that game with a loss, so
that's why a lot of people are definitely picking Georgia ahead of Florida. Georgia's better than Florida in 2021. No shame in saying that, but I don't think head and shoulders above where you just kind of ride off Florida going into that game. But, the loss to Alabama maybe going into that game. You have LSU the game before Georgia as well. So, looking at the schedule, Florida could have 2 losses going into that game in Jacksonville. So where's the mindset at when you head into that game in Jacksonville if you've already lost a game versus Alabama, if you've already lost a game versus LSU, and then Kentucky is before that game as well. And I know you said, like you said, you have Kentucky ahead of Florida in your SEC East standings. So that's another game. And look, so Kentucky's given Florida some issues the last couple of years. Kyle Trask had to come in and save Florida 2 years ago. Florida blew them out last year with that offense, just a complete mismatch there in 2020. But most years in recent years, Kentucky has given Florida fits. Missouri has as well. But since 2018, Dan Mullen hasn't lost to either team there. And I kind of look at it that way. Florida's still more talented than Missouri. Florida's still more talented than Kentucky. Even with all the talent that they lost last year, Florida's still going to have a top 10 24/7 sports composite ranking. Count those transfers that they got in on defensive line. Count DeMarcus Bowman coming in at running back. Florida lost a lot of talent last year, a lot of proven talent last year. They're going to have to definitely develop DeMarcus Bowman. Hope those defensive tackle transfers that they got from Auburn and Penn State last year come in ready to go as well. So, I think Dan Mullen's not recruited the best, but still a top 10 roster, counting those transfers. I still have Florida second in the East. Even with a tougher schedule, I still think Dan Mullen paired with Emory Jones and a top 10 roster, to me, kind of just pencils in Florida to be still up there second East.
Yeah, and look, I'm not going to sit here and say that I think Florida doesn't have as good of players as Missouri or Kentucky, even though I will say Florida is 5-5 all time against Missouri. I don't know if a lot of people know that. It really kind of shocked me that they've only played 10 times. I'm so used to Missouri and A&M being in the conference now. You think you'd look up and, it'd be like, oh, it's 42 to, 27 or something like that. But, is it fair, David, and I don't think it is to expect, even as good of a play caller as Dan Mullen is. Listen, they're still going to hit some wheel routes. The backs are going to be used out of the backfield in the passing game. I love the potential of DeMarcus Bowman. I think him and Marshawn Lloyd as young guys on that side of the conference are very talented backs, speaking about the back at South Carolina. But I think it's unfair to ask Emory Jones and these other guys to be able to replicate what Florida did last year offensively. It's like asking Bryce Young and Mechie and a couple of these other guys to try and replicate what Mac Jones and Devontae Smith and all those guys did over there. And if the defense doesn't improve, it could get weird quick.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I've said, you take away from the 2020 offense and what they did if you think it's just easily replicatable, to be replicated. Of, okay, well, we'll change our offense. We'll change our quarterback to Emory Jones. We lose Kyle Pitts, who was an all-world, all-time tight end. Kadarius Toney, who came on the scene and really bursted for 70 catches last year. And that's a lot. You're replacing a lot of talent there. The offense is going to be different. No doubt about it. It's going to be different. And even impactful, it's going to be different. They're going to be impactful in different ways. You're going to run the ball a lot more with a running style quarterback, and you go 5 deep at running back. It'd be difficult not to try and run the ball with as deep as Florida goes there at running back. And I think that sets up big plays in the passing game, but not necessarily as many. I think it sets up a whole lot of third and short situations, maybe even second short situations where you can take a little more chances there in one-on-one coverage, because to me, it's going to start with the run game. I think defenses are going to be keyed in on that run game. And it's going to leave a lot of one-on-ones for those wide receivers for Florida. So Jacob Copeland, Justin Shorter, the top 2 receivers coming back from last year, have to be able to beat one-on-one coverage, have to be able to not rely on coverages shifted towards Kyle Pitts or Kadarius Toney and be the guys to step up there at those wide receiver positions. So a lot of questions. I think, going back to probably more of an offense like hybrid of Mullen, Dak Prescott.
Man, I was going to segue right to that, David. That's perfect, man. You think you do this for a living, That's a great segue, because I do, and I don't want to cut you off, but it perfectly blends into my next question. Will this look more like the Dan Mullen and Mississippi State and Dak Prescott? And really, what he's more comfortable with, or maybe used to coaching even more with that runner, maybe not the most elite thrower, but a guy that's a threat in the quarterback running game, which Dan does an unbelievable job at, going all the way back to Tim Tebow. My question is, all that's great, and we can talk about Emery and Copeland and Shorter, but I've had Chris Doering on here, former All-American Florida Gator, and the offensive line is a worry at Florida. I look at the athletes that Florida typically has up front on the offensive line, and just like Auburn, in my opinion, just like LSU and some other teams, is offensive line a worry for you going into this year? If you're going to have a run-to-pass offense with a quarterback that is, a dual threat, maybe a little bit heavier runner than passer, in my opinion.
Yeah, it has to be a worry because of what you've seen the last 2 years from that offensive line, and even in run situations, not being able to do it. And even with a passing attack to where defenses are dropping 8 in coverage and you still have trouble running the ball. That has to be a worry till Florida comes out improved. Now, I'll say that the good thing about that is the shift in offense. And I think, I'm not so sure they knew what kind of player Kyle Trask was going to be when he come in and set all kind of records. And I'm not sure they recruited for that style of offense. They've recruited for the dual threat run style approach. And I think the offensive line kind of sets that too. I think John Hevesy, the offensive line coach, he had some problems with the pass happy style offense and being able to develop his players for that style of offense. Now you go back to the offense that he's been ingrained in with Dan Mullen back to the Mississippi State days. And Stuart Reed's come in from Mississippi State to transfer last year. I think it suits him as well. He was in that Nick Fitzgerald style of offense there with Dan Mullen when he was recruited by this staff back at Mississippi State, transfers to Florida last year. Even he struggled more than he did at Mississippi State with this passing style attack that Florida's run the last couple of years. So I think the shift in offense helps the offensive line as well. I mean, Emory Jones, he comes into the game last year, everybody in the stadium knows he's running it, still averages 7 yards a carry. So I think it helped the offensive line. A slippery style quarterback helps the offensive line. Now, I don't think they're going to be some great offensive line. I don't. They haven't recruited well enough there. And like I said, we've seen the issues. Even when they should be able to run the ball the last couple of years, they haven't been able to. But I do think with Emory Jones, Anthony Richardson there at quarterbacks, maybe in some short yardage situations, going 5 deep at running back, I think this helps. It helps the offensive line just a little bit, but I'm not sure the ceiling. I think the ceiling's pretty low for the offense, but I think the floor can be raised a little.
Yeah, and again, it's something too where when you do recruit to a certain style from an offensive line standpoint, it is hard to transition. It's almost a really good thing and somewhat of a bad thing. But when you look at the numbers Florida put up last year offensively, I mean, it ended up being a good thing. Kyle Pitts, to me, is a generational player. I don't know if we're going to see a guy like him, every 2 or 3 years, just an absolute freak show. But looking on the other side of the ball, David, we're here with David Waters from Gator Breakdown. Make sure you check that out, YouTube, anywhere you get your podcast. I know our Florida audience is in love with the show, and they should be. But when I look defensively, my monologue was this, David. Week 3, to me, if I'm a Florida fan, is Judgment Day for Todd Grantham. You saw last year, we saw kind of the friction between him and Mullen. Going into this year, you start out, not with cupcakes. You got Willie Taggart and FAU coming in. You can't give up a ton of points there. But when I look at 2 guys or 2 teams that need to start off well from a momentum standpoint, and everybody wants to start off well, it's LSU and it's Florida. And if Florida comes in and gives up 45 or 50, over 50 points, or loses, 42 to 21 or 24 against Bama at home and gives up those points, I mean, do you think Todd Grantham is really, really on the hot seat? And if so, can you see him, not being the Florida defensive coordinator after that week or even close to after that week? Because if I'm a Florida fan, I've got to see it against an elite team. Shutting down a Tennessee team without a great roster is one thing. South Carolina's the same thing. You're Florida. And we're used to seeing Florida have as elite players as anybody, especially on the defensive side. Is week 3 Judgment Day for Todd Grantham, David?
I think for most of the fan base, it absolutely is. It's not going to matter. I mean, unless it's ugly, but nobody's really predicting it to be that ugly versus FAU and USF the first 2 weeks. So it is going to come down to week 3 and what you do versus Alabama. And you saw in Atlanta last year what kind of, with Florida and a terrible defense still in the game versus Alabama. But fans aren't going to be happy if it's another shootout and, you're supposed to have these athletes on defense. And if you go and lose by 7 in another shootout, okay, you kind of just look at it, but it's just another feather in the cap of not being able to count on the Todd Grantham defense as the year goes on. This is Alabama. They have all the talent in the world. Bryce Young's going to be a really, really good quarterback, but it is early in the season for them too, and replacing a whole lot of pieces on offense. And, for them to come into the swamp and go put up 40 or 50 points, that's going to rub the fan base the wrong way for everything that happened last year, knowing that Dan Mullen and Todd Grantham had to have a heart-to-heart after the season. And some of the reasonings we saw last year for a really bad defense, not being able to get lined up before the snap. Yeah. And these were experienced players. These are guys who have been in the defense for their 3rd season now, and they look completely lost. And look, it follows a trend of Todd Grantham in a way. You go back to his time at Georgia, starts off really well and then trails off. And then he has to go somewhere else. And, that's the time frame a lot of people point to of having some good defenses to start off with. But for whatever reason, as time goes by, the defense gets worse. So our coaches figuring it out, our opposing coaches figuring it out. And it's just kind of been a trend for Todd Grantham. 2018, 2019 were good in some ways, but situational football was pretty bad for Florida's defense. And then the bottom fell out in 2020 when you were looking to take steps in just situational football, get better on 3rd down, get better on 4th down, do better against Georgia in certain situations, do better against LSU in certain situations. There was no steps forward. Everything fell back. And the excuses of you can point to COVID, you can point to pandemics, and a lot of people will. And that can be reasons. But why did it affect Florida on defense more so than other defenses? Why didn't Florida, a lot of defenses started slow last year and then improved. Alabama's one of them. Not a great start, but was one of the best defenses in the country by the end of the year. Florida never got better. Florida rarely got better, rarely showed progress. And, the progress is going to have to come in 2021 in this season. And it starts week 3 with Alabama. You're going to have to go out there and show there's some tangible evidence out there that this defense is getting better. You've recruited talent to be able to fill in gaps from the last couple of years and take the necessary steps. But this is contract year. This is his last year on his contract in Gainesville. A lot of people think either way Todd Grantham's going. He either does good enough and Florida's defense bounces back and he goes takes a job somewhere else, or it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And this is his last year in Gainesville either way.
David, great stuff, man. I'm going to let you plug your stuff in 1 second, but I do want to say to our Florida fans, if Florida wins the East or finishes second and I'm totally wrong, I will be the first one to come on here and eat crow and say that, I was wrong, you guys are right, whatever. I've got no problem doing that. But I want to tell our Florida fans out there, I love you guys. Y'all are, I love the banter. I don't like echo chambers, David. Echo chambers going to be the death of us all, man. Groupthink and all that stuff. But tell everybody where they can find your work. It's great content. If you're a Florida fan, you need to be following this guy not only on social, but subscribing to his stuff as well. We're going to have him on here a lot. We talk Florida a lot. David, please tell everybody where they can find you, my friend.
Thanks, man. Yeah, at GatorDave_SEC on Twitter. You can find Gators Breakdown at news4jax.com/Gators Breakdown, or YouTube for the video version. It's out there on all the major podcast platforms as well. Of course, ramping up towards SEC Media Days and getting into the flow of things as fall is gonna shortly be here.
Yeah, it is, and I'm gonna see you at Media Days, David, right?
Yep. I'll be there Sunday through Tuesday to get Florida and Georgia stuff for our TV station here in Jacksonville. So, of course, Monday will be very, very busy with Dan Mullen being there on the first day. So we'll have all the content covered there on Gators Breakdown.
Definitely, man. Well, I'm sure we'll talk there. Maybe have a cold soda or two. Stay warm there in Jacksonville, brother. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, man. All
right. Appreciate you guys as well. Make sure you subscribe. YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Go to thejboyshow.com. Get some of that merch. Subscribe as well to David's stuff. It's fantastic. It's Gators Breakdown. It's easy to find. We appreciate you joining us. It's been another edition of the Jboy Show. Jboy's going. Gone.
The Jboy Show is produced by David Cohn, Technical Director Dave Hammock, Creative Director David Culbertson, Audio Engineer Feyzan Shareef, Production Assistants Blaine Crain and Kyle Orr, Executive Producers Jake Crain, Vince Thompson, Steve Chamberlain, and David Cohn. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, thejboyshow.com, for updates regarding our newest apparel and merch designs. Win the water cooler with the Jboy Show.